Hiya folks, Simon here, welcome back to the channel, and I know I haven't done a news update for you in a while, but I hope this is worthy of being brought to your attention. The headline is Square Enix will announce new titles between July and August. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but I believe this is going to be relevant to those of you who are looking forward to Final Fantasy XVI. Now, nothing about Final Fantasy XVI is spoken of here. This is speculation, but you know, we as fans, we do like to get our hopes up, don't we? And often we get deflated, but hopefully not this time. So, of course, with the whole worldwide situation that's going on right now, with COVID and what have you, a lot of gaming events, including E3, which was the really big one, have been cancelled. So publishers and those in the games industry are having to make alternative arrangements in order to put forth their announcements to us. So at a recent Square Enix press conference, there was a Q&A session, and they were asked about how they're going to make any potential game announcements this year, since they didn't do so at E3, which they would normally do. And Square responded by saying that in place of E3, they had planned to have a press conference as a replacement event, but were unable to do so since assets were not complete. So they've got at least one unannounced game, maybe more, but at least one, where they wanted to announce it at a separate press conference in place of E3, but various assets, maybe gameplay trailers, whatever they were going to put together, were not complete, presumably because their staff were working from home and what have you. We'll be announcing new titles individually as timing permits. Several will debut around July to August. Okay, now as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but as far as I know, there's only really one unannounced game at, not including Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, there's only one other unannounced game at Square Enix that's like a big game that we know about, and that is the game that's being headed up by Naoki Yoshida. Now, if you don't know who Naoki Yoshida is, he's usually known around the internet as Yoshi P. He is the fellow that is generally seen as being responsible for saving Final Fantasy XIV. That's the MMO game. Now, in case you're not aware, Final Fantasy XIV launched and it was a disaster, an absolute unmitigated disaster. It was despised, and Square took it offline. They put Naoki Yoshida in charge, and he literally revamped the game, relaunched it, and it was a successful game then. A lot of people loved it, and to this day, it's got many, many fans, many players. A lot of people love Final Fantasy XIV, and in most parts, I think people would point out that that is because of the work that Naoki Yoshida did on that game. So once that game was successful, Square moved Yoshi P over to their creative business division number 3. And this is where they put him in charge of the unannounced project, which we don't know what it is. Of course, it's unannounced. But what's interesting is that they've moved Yoshi P, who is very familiar with the Final Fantasy franchise. He worked on Final Fantasy XIV, after all. And they also placed him on the committee that oversees the Final Fantasy franchise. You can read about this on Wikipedia. So they've put this man in charge of an unannounced game in Business Division number 3, of which the concept art also looks very Final Fantasy-ish. Okay, it looks more traditional Final Fantasy-ish, going back to the fantasy roots, but still, you know, everything is pointing to the fact that it is almost certainly going to be something like Final Fantasy XVI that his development team are working on. And we've known about that for some time, so that's nothing new. But as I was saying, this is really the only game, at least that I know of at Square, at least a big game, that would be potentially be getting excited about for events like E3 and stuff that Square were going to be using originally. So yeah, do you think we'll be hearing Final Fantasy XVI news around August this year or July this year? I was kind of hoping we was going to hear something at the recent PS5 event, but Square didn't even say anything about Final Fantasy at that event. They never even mentioned the recent release of Final Fantasy VII Remake. But that's actually a good sign, in my opinion, because I remember a couple of years ago, we had, I think it was 2018, we had no news from Square whatsoever on Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 at all. They never mentioned it. And then come E3 the following year, that's when we had all of that big info about it, and we were told it was coming out, I think, at the end of 2019. It obviously ended up coming out in 2020 or something. But yeah, Square are usually, that's usually the way Square work. They will say nothing at all. They won't even drop like little hints until the actual event where they make their announcement. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. Of course, you know, this could be something else entirely that we just don't know about. But in my opinion, it's about the right time now to announce Final Fantasy XVI. Final Fantasy VII Remake is great. I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes, you know, in part 2. But ultimately, it's been, what, 5 years since the last Final Fantasy game that, you know, that is part of the numbered series, Final Fantasy 15, and they are going to be wanting to move that franchise forward. I'm sure that remakes are going to be a big part of the franchise since Final Fantasy VII Remake has done so well. But on top of that, they are going to want to keep, you know, new games coming out also. So, yeah, I do suspect that Final Fantasy 16 is definitely in development. I would put money on that. Actually, I know I wouldn't do that because somebody's bound to expect me to do so. But I do really believe that it is in development. And I would be a little bit surprised if we don't hear about it as one of these announcements that we're going to be getting apparently in summer. So, yeah, what do you guys think? Is this exciting news? Or are we just getting our hopes up again to be deflated? As we often do. We're suckers for it, aren't we? Well, at least, you know, some of us are. I know that some of you guys would deny that. But there we have it then, guys. So, in any case, even if it's not Final Fantasy related, Square Enix are going to be announcing new games. Maybe it's more remasters and ports of older games. You know, I'd be happy with that as well. I don't just mean from the Final Fantasy franchise, but from other franchises as well. Like we had Trials of Mana recently, and that was a good remake actually. Not even a remaster, so maybe we'll be getting more things like that. But yeah, please do share your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you expect from Square this year, since we now know we are going to be getting future announcements from them, which, yeah, you know, please do let me know. But thanks for stopping by, guys. I hope you've enjoyed watching, and I'll see you next time for more news on Final Fantasy, or whatever pretty much I think you'll want to know about. Take care. Goodbye.